Okay. Oops. Present live. Sorry, just a minute. Slideshow from beginning.
Thank you for attending this ConnecTogether event.
Can we hear that?
Yep.
Great.
During this event, we have automatic closed captioning available. Please go to the bottom of the Zoom meeting, click Live Transcript, and then Show Subtitles to turn them on. Before we begin, we'd like to take a quick moment to let you know how you can join an opinion research panel made specifically for British Columbians living with disabilities.
For 25 years, the Disability Foundation has been fostering meaningful experiences for Canadians with disabilities through outdoor recreation, social connectedness, innovative adaptive devices, and more. Today we are asking, how has the pandemic affected you? Help strengthen decision makers' understanding of your needs and experiences by joining an online opinion research panel consisting solely of people with disabilities and their caregivers. Make a difference in your community today. The Disability Foundation. Reimagine what is possible.
Did you know? Young adults with disabilities have a harder time getting hired. Break down barriers by sharing your story. Take our survey.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Emily from the Disability Foundation, going to be facilitating this discussion today. And yeah, it is being live streamed, so you can make the choice if you'd like to have your camera on or off. Oh, sorry about that. And also feel free, we want this to be an open discussion. So if you have any questions or comments, you can either put them in the chat or you are able to unmute yourself and be a part of the discussion at any time. So just please be respectful of other people talking, and yeah, we're all here to sort of share our knowledge. So let's try and keep it constructive and positive and just have sort of an open, organic conversation around parents of children with disabilities. So that's what we're talking about today, and this is part 2 of the discussion. And we have 2 parents who are joining us for the second time here. Very grateful to have you both. So first, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves a little bit. Estella is an entrepreneur, business executive leader, strategy consultant, and an advocate for inclusion and accessibility. Her professional and personal accomplishments and experiences would not be possible without the support of her partner, Arthur, for over 32 years, her incredible network of family and friends, and lastly, her 2 amazing children, who are her reasons for passionately advocating for an inclusive and accessible world. Estella, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today?
Yeah, sure. First of all, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm long hair, brown, with brown long hair, and from an Asian descent, and very happy to be here, just to let you all know. I think I'm quite excited and very honored again to be asked to join, because the topic of sharing, our experience as a parent with children with disability is incredibly important, I think, because through the sharing of the information, people learn from it, and hopefully we can help. It takes a village to raise our children. And with that being said, it is important that we, utilize and maximize the learnings. And so I'm excited. And as you had mentioned, yes, absolutely. From a professional perspective, what you mentioned is exactly what I do for a living. However, the most important role is being a mom and being an advocate, making sure the future for them is definitely bright and accessible. So very excited to be here again.
Thank you so much. And can you tell us a little bit about Maddie?
With Madison, so Madison was born 6 months gestational, so I was only 6 months pregnant. She was just less than 1,000 grams, and so within the first, call it 3 weeks, she really endured what a lot of people probably wouldn't. So heart surgery, laser eyes, and just a lot of premature, events that had to happen in order for her to be 17 years old, resilient and energetic today. And so with Madison being profound deaf and hard of hearing with low vision, so legally blind. And with that also came with a little bit of a delay in development. And yeah, so that's Madison. And I do have a son who is also from a non-visual disability. He has ADHD and also has tons of allergies, and we don't talk about, the non-visual, but even the sensory of taste. So it can be very depleting, right? So, or not being able to thrive fully, enjoying food, for example. He's got a peanut allergy and he's anaphylactic, and we've experienced having him literally emergency rushed to the hospital. So that gave me an insight that it really, disability comes in different forms. So that, it's not just a story about Madison, but it's also a story about my son and, all the things that we do together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here for a second time. And thank you for sharing a little bit of your story. I'm going to introduce Michelle as well. Michelle is the mother of Joshua. I'm assuming now 21 years old, who was born with a rare brain disorder. Josh is wheelchair bound, completely dependent for all aspects of daily living, and is nonverbal. He's attending Trinity Western University, which Michelle is in his dorm right now, with the support of the BC Initiative for Inclusive Post-Secondary Education. Michelle has involved Josh in a wide range of outdoor and sporting activities, which he loves. They run marathons together as Team Joshua. They began their running career in 2008 and are the first mother-son duo team to post a Boston Marathon qualifying time, which they did at the 2013 Toronto Waterfront Marathon. And they qualified again at the 2017 Chicago Marathon, where Michelle played an influential role in establishing a division for wheelchair duo teams who previously were not included. Michelle is a passionate advocate for inclusion. Michelle, would you like to add to that at all and tell us about why you're here?
Well, I think thank you, and thank you for the honor and privilege of being able to share. And I think it's so important to hear from parents that are a little bit further down the road, like Estella and I, who, you're paving a whole. There's nothing typical. And so you've got to figure out a lot of things on your own. And so it's great to have forums like this that we can get together and discuss and share our experiences and learn from each other, inspire each other. And, I think it's also great to see and hear stories that let you know that life isn't over because of significant challenges and disabilities. In fact, it's those things that really give you a strength and a character. If difficulty is like weights in the gym, we've got big muscles. Stella and I, because we've done some heavy lifting in the years as parenting. And like Estella, I feel the same, that my most important and significant role is that of being a mother. And so I'm excited to be here and have this discussion and hopefully just inspire some other families and individuals along the way.
Absolutely. Will you tell us a little bit about Joshua and how he's doing now? And
oh my goodness. Well, today's the first day of back in-person class. Josh displays his displeasure in something by blowing a raspberry, and he'll go, and that's how he feels about Zoom. So he's beside himself excited to be back in person and to get to be with live people. What is very exciting this week is Josh is actually moving. We've had this dorm room since September, but we it's just, there's been so many roadblocks and difficulties, but he's actually going to be living on campus. Now, if you can imagine what it requires to recruit, hire, train, manage, a team of, we've actually got 7, potentially 8 people around the clock to support Josh to live on campus in Langley here at Trinity Western University. So it's like the culmination of a lot of hard work. And it's so he's excited. I'm excited. I mean, the thought of that I'm actually going to sort of be an empty nester is what? Yeah, so it's a very exciting week for Josh and for us.
That's incredible. Yeah. Congratulations
Yeah.
to everyone involved there. I'm sure it's no small feat picking a team of people that comfortable with, and that is one of the things that Estella brought up when I kind of asked you what you'd like to talk about today, or if there were any sort of topics that wanted to be broached. And Estella, you had mentioned, tips on how, what, and when parents need to prepare themselves for when their child is wanting to be more independent.
Yeah.
And I know Joshua is a little bit of an exception to the rule because he'll never be fully independent, but has it been a bit of a learning curve for you, Michelle, and having to let go of certain aspects of his life? And
yeah, what's been so fascinating, I realize, is that well, I had like one, so as I'm training this team, and I've had a longtime caregiver who he's going on to his real career, which is not as a caregiver, but he's been training some of the new ones coming on. And he shared in a team meeting that we had last week, he said, 3 years ago, Michelle said, I want Josh to go to university. And he said, in my mind, I thought, there's no freaking way. How is that ever going to be possible? And he said, here we are, and it's happening, and it's so exciting. So, this vision, this dream started 3-4 years ago. Josh is 20, so he was, 16, 17. And, when you have a child with such significant need and who requires support in not just a warm body beside him, but really engaging and good support. You have this wall of impossibility in front of you, but faith is your best friend. To believe that I don't know how, but somehow. And I think that's a great statement. I don't know how, but somehow. And so to have a vision, to have a dream, and to not know how this is all going to come to fruition, but to believe that somehow there's a way to make this all happen. So what I just began to say was, I realized that, like, for me to just let go and trust that Josh is going to be okay, that he can handle it and the team can handle it. And in fact, it's going to be really good for him to be separate from me. And to, so I it's harder than I realized to kind of open up my hands and let go.
I imagine that there would be a bit of almost a grieving process there of how things were. And I think that happens to lots of parents when their children go off to college or university. I know Estella, is Maddie 18, Madison?
She's graduating this year, from a K&E program. And, I've thought about, not that I've been trying to push her out of the door or anything, but I've been thinking about what does the future look like? And for years, for Madison, and which is why, again, the field that I decided to focus on was to make the environment, our community, ready for individuals to support her. And so it has been challenging, I'll be honest, because there's a lot of influences. It's not just the, access from schools or, resources of ASL. It's also the influences of her friends or her, her community. And it's also influences about education, whether the program that she's in. So she needs to stay one more year because the program she's in, it wasn't your regular diploma grade 12. But saying that, she's influenced by friends or, her community of that she grew up with. And majority of them haven't gone out and done a secondary because they're not prepared for it. And my learning has been what are the options for her if the options were never given to her to be prepared. And so that's the biggest thing that I've learned in the last 2-3 years is she needs to have regular education, have the options to go to university. Then we'll deal with it. Just like how you said, Michelle, I don't know how, but somehow I love that because we have to be creative because as you said, there's nothing typical about the world that we live in. We are trailblazers and we have to make changes. And that's exactly why these conversations like this happen and is needed because there will be others out there that says, you know what, I relate to that. My daughter dreams to go to university, but she doesn't have the credits or the diploma that is required because yada, yada, yada. Or it's influenced that this is where we're capped. And so the preparedness for me has been not the fear, I guess, that she hasn't been equipped to be able to really experience her fullest potential. And it's not that we as parents, put a cap on her, not at all. In fact, we've given her as much as possible of different experience and learning, which is why we constantly, reinforce she needs to try to finish grade 12 with diploma to give her the option, right? Where versus just going straight and finding a job and, later on regret. And so it's been challenging to kind of change that mindset, that culture from her perspective. It's been easy, especially since the dependency has been on us as well. So that's the other thing. As parents, I think we've done this, 18 years, 17 years of caring and, relying on us, our children, that I've had to also go through, you call it grieving. It's the stages of letting go, right? And it's also part of the cultural identity as me. So earlier I said, my most important role is being a mother and being a mother to an individual with disability. Then later on, it's like, wait a second, I am no longer that. She's going to be independent. I am going to be a mother, who gets to visit and hopefully be a grandmother. Sorry, that's way past from it. But the point I'm saying is there's so many elements to getting prepared, both mentally, physically, in terms of accessibility, physical, but for both, I think, sides of the coin. And for myself, it's that, am I going to be also ready with that identity, right? Changes. I that's the part, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I think that in all of our lives, we go through many identity shifts and having to shed old parts of us. I know the pandemic did that in lots of ways for people as well. And it is mindset, I believe, that's probably one of the most important things. So for somebody that's maybe not as far along the journey as both of you, what are some things that helped you achieve a new mindset? And I know it's something that you have to probably work at day by day and maybe sometimes hour by hour, but are there any things that really, really encouraged you and helped you switch your perspective and make sure that you were making the best out of a situation that, you didn't know was going to happen?
I think you said the exact right word, is that your mindset determines the direction. Your perspective determines the ceiling that you potentially can put on your children. And none of us want to consciously put a limiter on. I will tell you that, and I say this not with a a bitterness or a condemning kind of way, but the system, meaning the educational system and the whole support system, they don't expect a lot, and
Exactly.
they it is. When I think of when Josh was encouraged to go to, not encouraged, expected and just channeled into a life skills program that was really anything but life skills. It was what I consider to be grown-up babysitting and not providing life skills at all. So it's to work, it's easy to condemn, it's easy to criticize. It's important to have frank, honest discussions. I think what I'm trying to say is, don't just settle for what the system and people want to put on you. I would say have a very open mindset. Look for what does your child love? What are they passionate about? What makes them thrive? And then start to be creative and look at what could potentially be possible. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is to have an outlook and a perspective and a mindset that says, I'm not just going to settle for, and I'm not just going to follow the path that's laid for me. And I think that's what I'm excited for, that Josh is the first student with his level of disability that is, now not just attending classes, but he's having the full inclusive experience of student life. Last week one of his caregivers has just graduated from Trinity and is taking a breather before he goes on to graduate school. So he's Josh's academic and community inclusion support. He still has friends here on campus, including his girlfriend. So Josh met some of his friends, and then they went to class, did homework, went and hopped into our wheelchair truck, and they went into the town, Fort Langley, which is like a college town, and they went out for beer and burritos. And Josh FaceTimed me. He was so excited because he had girls in the back of the truck. and it was just such a moment of joy, because here he is doing what every 20-year-old male would love to do, right? He's a university student, he's learning, he's going to class, he's growing, and he's going out for beer and burritos with friends. And I mean, Josh cannot speak. He needs full help to do everything. So it's quite an extraordinary thing. Forgive me if I'm a little excited about all this right now, but this was so far from what was possible, what anybody thought would have been possible, a few years ago, and certainly going into high school. But I realized this is not the right track. This is not giving him the opportunity, preparing him, like Estella said, for, a potentially great future.
Yeah.
To answer your question.
Yeah. No, you go off on these tangents. Yeah. That's what we want to hear about, because it's incredibly inspiring to see everything that Joshua is achieving, and to see how far you've come, and to see even, a couple years ago thinking that something might not be possible, where is the ceiling? We don't know. So yeah. That's really beautiful. Your perspective determines your ceiling. Yes. And Maggie says, so happy for you.
So just before I came onto this Zoom call, I went you know, I've been in Zoom classes with Josh and the professor for this class, who happens just to be known to be the favorite professor on the entire campus. Just a dynamic, amazing guy who's completely embraced Josh and so excited for Josh to be in his class. So I went to class before so that I could just meet him in person. And he said to me, my wife works for the University of Fraser Valley, and she works in senior administration, and she's in charge of the EDI, the Equality, Diversity, Inclusion mandate of the university. And I told her about your and Josh's story, and she would like to invite you onto campus to share your story. And this is how, right? This is how we make progress.
That's right. Yeah. I was just going to add to that, Michelle, that if what you've experienced, like you mentioned, 7 professional support, because this is the first time to this degree of an individual with his needs and abilities required support. If that is the brand new, and this is my world, you know, from profession, it's documenting and then sharing that and then sending it to all university, because I guarantee you it will shed a lot of the fears and a lot of the, it will promote acceptance a lot faster, because majority of the time, you know, Emily, you asked, what did we need to prepare in order to get to this point? The how part. You know, I think of it always at the how, because if we're learning, if we're doing these amazing, you know, things, let's make sure that everyone else can benefit from it, because darn it, it was a tough go. So let's make it worth more than just our effort for one, you know, family or just us. So I totally think, you know, that experience, when you are sharing it, should be documented, shared, because not only is it inspiring, but the professions that, you know, and from university, because there's accessibility services there, can learn from it, right? So I would definitely highly suggest that. And to answer your question on how or I've helped to prepare myself and Madison, what I've had to do was completely erase my own judgment about the school system and, you know, all of that. Instead, I needed to rely on more facts and seek for more facts, which meant that I needed to also see what other resources were out there. Because you can't only just put blame on, you know, one area or whatnot. Like I said earlier, it takes a village to raise our children. And so I wanted to know who else in this village can be part of it. And so what we've done for the last, I call it 2-3 years, I've moved her to a new school. I put her in and dropped it. Not, I didn't drop her, but it was a complete, not just change in mindset, change in her culture identity and her identity, because she was known to be in the DHH program. Now she's in a regular group, right? But it was making sure that before we put her in that place, speaking to a counselor, getting prepared, you know, how am I going to have those conversations with her? And because it's very tough, and it's teenage life already on top of it, right? And then I also spoke with the, you know, interviewed and spoke with the teachers and the guidance counselors and the principal, just to make sure that this is the right environment. I've made my errors in the past where I just followed suit. To your point, Michelle, it's just the regular path that we typically take because you don't know, right? So you don't question, you just say, oh, okay, that's the right thing to do, okay, and off you go. But this time when she, you know, in high school, my husband and I said, you know what, let's take her off of that grid, that lane, that typically is the lane. And let's put her in what we think is what you call the norm. Because to us, that is exactly what we want to give her, is that opportunity to be normal and have options to like everyone else. And so talking to the teachers, the principal, setting up the stage for her in that, school was important. So that's what we did. And we've seen her confidence, her ability just, get really, really stronger, and her resiliency and her advocacy to say, I can't see, I need to move forward. Sometimes during, not lately with COVID, but when there's big, huge assembly, she can't hear, she can't see, and there's no ASL, she would then advocate, I need to have CC, like it's that type of stuff. Whereas if she had stayed where she was, it would have already been known, right? So putting her in that allowed us as well to be able to say, okay, this is the real world. The real world out there is not, a recipe that already is pre-cooked with a preconception of a cap. We need her to see what normal looks like and options out there, but give her the tools and resources beyond even those walls of my house, as well as the walls of the school. So we've put her into a lot of community activities within her community, because that's a culture that she embraces and wants to be part of. And so, whether it was theater, arts and theater for the deaf, whether it is dance, anything. It was anything and everything she wanted to experience within. And we also identified with a few people that I thought would be a great mentor for her. I can't do that for her because I'm not in that, community and be able to, provide her that side. And so having her have some mentors was important as well. So yeah, so I feel like having her prepared beyond just education or what is provided was key. And she has anxiety, and part of it is because she has anxiety. Like we're talking about true anxiety, where she goes through counseling and whatnot. With the pandemic, before pandemic, she was really doing really well. But with the pandemic, it has heightened her anxiety, where we couldn't even leave her alone for even 5 minutes. And she's 17, right? And she needed to have specific strategies how to cope. And so now we're going back to it. It's like, okay, 30 minutes where I'm not here, an hour, I'm not here. Okay, it's all of that. And so there's so many, again, factors, and I rely on a lot of the resources out there to be my partner and to, make sure that we give her the strategies. Because in the end, her mindset, her mental health and her ability to see herself being able to do it is the biggest thing that I want to make sure she's prepared to accept and be resilient out there. Yeah. So that's, the how part we've been working on.
I think you bring up a very, I think a critical point, and that is a sense of belonging. And that happens not by words, but it happens by experience. And what Josh is learning, not because I'm saying you belong, he's learning by experience. I'm a university student just like everybody else.
That's right.
And and for Maddie to say, I need CC, I need to be closer, I need supports to advocate for herself out in the real world. She's learning she belongs in the real world. Josh is, he's very communicative, even though he cannot speak. He uses sound approximations. He uses his facial expressions. He uses sign language, some little bits of ASL, but mostly, his own made up signs that we've, made up along the way. But what's critical is for him to speak using his augmentative communication, because that's what everybody can hear. So even though I understand what he's saying, I won't just let him say, I said, you tell me on touch chat, because he's got to learn to not just communicate with me and those closest to him, but to everybody. It's I'm sorry, I'm not being very clear here, but I'm got too many things on my mind that I want to share. But this whole idea of you belong, and you can't put them in a segregated classroom of life skills with no, like when
Exactly.
when Josh went to high school, in the life skills program, it turns out they're like, it's just like a little separate jail cell, and there was no integration, no inclusion, and so, and I might have mentioned this on the last time we talked, but there's a yearbook, a beautiful yearbook, published by the school that's this thick, with pictures of all the activities and sports and programs, and there was not a single, not one mention, page, picture, nothing of the life skills program. And I thought, there you have it, folks. They do not exist. They are not a part of the greater community. And school is a mini society. It's a mini ecosystem. It's the first introduction into the big world, the larger society of how life works. And if we take the formative years of students with disabilities and completely separate them, we are saying, you do not belong. You are separate. You are different, and you're not accepted. And we're teaching the same thing to the typical student body. And so this is why I am such I am a passionate and respectfully outspoken advocate for inclusion. I just gain more and more enthusiasm, knowing and believing in my heart how important it is, not just for Josh, but for everybody else.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, the belonging piece. That's a good way of just stating it. When I said earlier, we put her took her out of her stream and put her into integrated school, she was lost. Yes. So what I thought was, okay, I went through a transition plan for her. I built out a transition of, okay, get her into a summer school program. So it's a shorter period, blah, blah, blah. She can, experience that. It wasn't to get an extra credit. It was really about experiencing, right? In a very short, it was a good way for me to also see whether or not she can handle it. And, even that, we were first declined. There's been never an ASL, a person deaf that was going to summer school. Yeah. So I'm like, what? What do you mean? It's just, she just needs an ASL interpreter, for that class. And so this was what was stated. And it was about making sure that no one else goes out of the realm or that stream, like I said. And so, that showed me, to your point, that this is an ecosystem. And if they're not allowing our kids to expand within that ecosystem, then it is going to be the reality for them. And so once the summer school was done, oh my gosh, it was amazing, because within that 2 weeks, like I said, she has anxiety. Within that 2 weeks, she was able to go to Starbucks, which was across the street, by herself. Then she would call me and say, and this is the busiest, street in school in Calgary on 17th Ave. And she would call me and say, Mom, I'm going to Tim Hortons because instead of Starbucks, it's a little bit more expensive. So I'm going to go to Tim Hortons at the Shell station, which is like 2 blocks away. I'm like, who are you with? And she's like, by myself. That really said to me right there, that experience said she needs to move to a new school, because within that less than 2 weeks, she overcame and she learned and taught herself that independence and that, so that she can do it. So it was important to, again, within that transition. But back to the belonging, one of the other pieces there is making sure that she still was surrounded with her support, her network of people, because that's still her friends. I can't take away who she wants to hang out with, just like, so it was also important for me to make sure that her friends, who we adore, are also experiencing the same thing that Madison is experiencing, encouraging the group. It's because by association, you lift each other up, right? And so we, whether it's watching a show for the first time, a theater show that had ASL interpreter, brought her friends there, whether it is going on the C train from one point to another, together, because, she wouldn't be able to do it on her own, but it was an experience. So it showed her that school wasn't the only place for her to have her, experience. And it was a great way to feel that belonging if you're not yet there comfortable. So yeah, it was a very important thing for sure. One other point that I also wanted to mention here in terms of the how part again, and the influences of whether it's school, peers and parents. When we conducted our See to Hear program, when we went to the museum, right? It was very important for me to have those stakeholders, like the schools that she went to, the parent, an individual or a parent or a guardian for each student, and the students themselves to go to the Human Rights Museum to really experience what accessibility would look like, feel like in an environment that had all the technology and the resources for them. And even the whole, travel experience to the museum, we, conducted it so that they experienced that same feeling, right? Although it was staged, but still it showed them this is a possibility. And the goal was to also show the parents that this is our duty to ask and look and promote for this as well. And for the teachers, giving them, the opportunity to see outside the box, that there's more than the program or the curriculum that you're putting. Please, go beyond. And from that experience, one of the things that came out of it is they noticed that the wall had all these beautiful writing, like it was a shadow writing of welcome to the museum, right? But we all noticed there's no sign language on that wall. And yet it's the most welcoming. So earlier, Michelle, you said, it's about feeling welcome. Well, here I was trying to promote inclusion, going to the museum, but the one first experience you can imagine was that welcome wall, and their sign language was not there. That was like, oh my God, that is not right. So it took us a while, but after that event, field trip, we advocated and we connected with the museum execs, and they were fantastic. They were like, you're absolutely right. We took it from the Census Canada, all the languages that are taught. Well, guess what? Based on that, they put the languages. Rightfully so, they did that because they did what is stated on the census. And Canada does not have ASL, LSQ, none of the sign language is an official language. So that made sense. But I said, still, doesn't matter. You need to add it because your whole entire building has ASL and, digital ASL everywhere. So it just doesn't, equal out. And so last year, October 12th, they finally, because of COVID, it was supposed to be launched a year before, they finally made adjustments to that wall and made it completely inclusive. And now they have the sign language in there and they went all out. And to me, it wasn't about just changing that wall. It was about showing to the kids, the parents and the teachers that it doesn't matter. Even just that one request, if you don't go after it, if you don't question it, if you don't push, if you don't ask the right people, if you don't provide them, as you said, with a respectful way, with the facts behind it, then it's not going to be pushed and it's not going to be sustainable. So for me, it was important to, that was a big thing for me to make sure it went through and we fulfilled it, because that says back to the kids, wow, anything's possible.
Yeah.
Right. So that I just wanted to share that, because that just happened October 12th. And we did an event for our company showcasing that. And Raylyn and I videoed when I took Madison to the museum in person, because it was just such an event. I just needed to capture it. She was there the very first time, the second time, and then for this one, and she advocated for it. And so when she saw it, it was like her face, like I let her, and I was from behind videotaping, because I knew the moment she sees it, she's going to turn around and go, what? And that's exactly what she did. And she was a little emotional, but she didn't want to show the emotion. And it was the best feeling, because she just thought, wow, it's there, I belong, and it's welcoming, and they did it, so I get emotional when I talk about it, because such a amazing feeling, right?
Yeah. And
So,
everybody learned from that. Most importantly, your daughter, that you can make a change.
absolutely.
Right? You can change things for the better. And, I think that is the course that Josh is taking right now. One of the courses, it's called Foundations 201. And it's ideas that inspire. Ideas that inspire. And the question that they are investigating as students is, what is the good life? What is the good life? And advertisers, there's all kinds of messages coming at us. What is the good life? It is being beautiful, it's being skinny, it's being wealthy, it's being famous, it's all these things. But so the professor's saying, let's really think about what is the good life. And the professor is suggesting that a major component of the good life is making a difference and making things better for somebody else.
Yeah.
It's that sense of significance and contribution, and that life is not just about me. It's about how can I be a gift or a blessing, or do something for my neighbor, for my friend, for my family, for our society. And when we can foster that kind of mindset, we're gonna have better days.
Yeah. And I just, that's beautifully said. And I mean, it feels great, because you just validated what our company, purpose is, which is make a difference through inclusion. And, I think one of the things that I had indicated is, yes, it is a mindset, and the how is very important. But from the very first start, in order for it to really sustain and continuously improve, even when we're not there and it's next generation, it is very important that it doesn't become a mindset, it becomes a value. The society needs to see this as part of just it's a value. Value of accessibility is part of the right of an individual. When you value everyone's ability, disabilities, and of every range, you then really don't think about it as a mindset change. You don't think, it doesn't come as a forced, you need to always remember. For me, I think to myself, everywhere I go, I look at ways of creating difference, of making it better, more accessible. Like the processes in my head, I'm like, okay, that could be blah, 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 change this way, because it's embedded. It's part of my value system that I need to make sure that when I'm out there, and if I can make a difference and make some positive change, then I will share it. And so it is a value, I think, and it becomes a culture when it becomes a value, right? And so right now, though, the phase that we're in from a society, it is still considered a mindset. And this pandemic forced the mindset to change, right? There was a forced mindset, because everybody experienced what it feels like to be stuck at home. to be able to be on the video, not having digital, access, not having from an economics, whether it's not hearing because it's muted and etc. Like there's a lot of learning from this, and there was a lot of acceleration of progress. I believe that this pandemic has heightened for us. So I'm excited that, as we continue these discussions and sharing, I'm hoping, although it's still a mindset change and we're not all, the society's not there, I hope that within this lifetime, it becomes just a regular value and part of the culture. And it just comes second nature. It's in our DNA, right? So that's the key. Yeah.
It's the goal. Like the Steps Forward program, the BC Initiative for Inclusive Education, post-secondary education. Their vision is that inclusion is normalized.
Yes.
It's just normal. Right. So whether, it starts at preschool and goes all the way through K through 12 and then into post-secondary, that, like we are trailblazing. So we're, part of what we have to do here at university at Trinity is, we're making videos on why is Josh here? Why are you here? Because I'm just like you. I want to learn. I want to have friends. I want to, I want to have a better future. I want to increase and improve my skill set. So we're, it's kind of like double duty. The goal, the vision is that it is normalized. Inclusion is normalized. Diversity is normalized. It's we're comfortable with people that are different than us. And I think that's a part of why we're here on this discussion, is to further that understanding towards that vision.
Yeah, I just I just read Richard's comment here because it's on the chat, and in terms of I think it's TFL. Richard's indicated that they're starting to a youth assistive technology project, and it's hard to know how we're going to do this, but it's hi Richard, thank you for showing your. I thought that's brilliant, because that is assistive technology is my realm, right? Before focusing on this, it's customer experience, the world of user experience, and it is very important. So as we've discussed about sustainability, making it a value, the fact that you touched on technology and getting the youth be part of it is part of a sustainability. It's part of the strategy. It has to be, just like policies and processes that the government and standards that government is changing. And so, technology is the other area. So there's the 4 quadrant, which is the people, right? The individuals themselves, the society, the technology and processes, the how piece, and then the governance. It's the government of all levels, globally as well. So, assistive technology is, if you're interested to connect on that afterwards, absolutely, more than happy to, have that discussion with you, because it's an area where we're really focusing on, for sure, as well.
I'll ask Emily to send you my email address. Unfortunately, I must go, but it's been very informative meeting for us. We don't have the experience working with kids, so we're also, looking at partners and looking at the situations that parents find themselves in, and seeing how we can, maybe find a fit somewhere. So thank you so much, ladies. I have to go to another meeting at Technology for Living, so I'm going to say goodbye.
Thanks for being here, Richard. I will send you Estella's email and connect you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.
Take care. Yeah, time flies by when we have these conversations, but this is incredibly inspiring and congratulations on all of the work that you're doing. And I do think even the videos that you're making with Josh, Michelle, like it's more putting this in eyesight of people and letting them know what is possible is really what I think is going to make all the difference and make people sort of step forward. And like we've been saying this whole time, you can only be as big as the box that you put yourself in, and your perspective, sets your ceiling. I think by advocating for your children and letting them know that there's a realm of possibilities outside of what society may think that they can do, gives them that mindset. So then they start to believe in themselves, right? So it's incredibly important work. And I wish that we could delve into a little bit more like how to ask for accommodations for your child when society hasn't quite caught up yet.
Yes.
And sort of managing expectations. I mean, we have 4 minutes.
I would say like we're living that right now. And that's why one of the questions I asked Emily, a topic would be for parents out there, if they're experiencing schools with that aren't accessible, how they navigate through it. Because right now I'm helping another parent. There's a small parent group working on that as we speak for one of the schools in Vancouver. And we're this close. We're very close to getting the things that we need. And throughout this entire process, as we're making things accessible in this school, we've been documenting everything, because one of the key things, again, I mentioned earlier, is learn from this and document as you go and share, because it can't just stop at one school. It needs to be in all schools, and even the universities. Because darn it, if everyone in education, or sorry, in elementary and high school has that mindset that they're going to go to secondary school, universities need to be prepared now. They need to already have it set, and so yeah, it's the how part is always the challenging, right? So yeah,
it's what I would say. You're exactly right. But one of the things that I'm working on, and I maybe I'm premature in sharing this, because I'm developing systems. I'm learning. I've had a couple of entrepreneur friends that have successful businesses. One of them has spread 14 clinics across the country, and so they are teaching me what they've done to grow their business. And so I'm using those same strategies, tools, and principles to develop a self-sustaining system that supports Josh. It's like I'm the CEO of a mini corporation. And it's, the key, it's human resources, right? The single most important thing is the quality of the people that are supporting, or that are working for you. But this is what companies are, it's a challenge, but there's strategies. So I'm just working on developing a system for Josh, but it's going to be a duplicatable system.
Yes.
And so that's something I'm working on in the future. And and then once I'm there, then to partner with organizations like the Disability Foundation and so on to because you need a track to run on, right?
That's right.
Do need a track to run on. You need actionable, how do I do this?
Yes.
So yes,
just like a toolkit. Systems.
Exactly.
Yeah. Estella, can you link in the chat your Maddie program,
my website?
Make a difference with inclusion?
Sure. I just wanted to make a comment as well, just as I know it's already time. But the how part, the strategy pieces, but it's the story and the passion that we share. and finding the right individuals out there that get it and that get impacted and inspired and say, this is a no-brainer. We just have to do this. That is what helps move things. So earlier again, you know, the question of how. Yeah, so processes and everything that we put together in strategy, absolutely. That is definitely key and needed. But it's the other side, it's a human connection and the ability to communicate effectively, with sincerity and being vulnerable as well is key to making people understand the why we're doing it, not just the how and what. And that's what really promotes it and what I find makes things move. And so, you know, that's the effort. As parents, we do such a good job already doing that, right? Like, you know, so it's just honing in on our natural skills.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, that was.
Well, thank you. Thank you both so much for being
Emily.
here. Maggie in
you.
the chat just says it's inspiring to be here. Thanks a lot. Yeah, make a difference and a change. I'm in awe of you ladies. Thank you so much for coming back and for everything you're doing and advocating for. Make sure to keep taking care of yourselves in the process. And we'll definitely be in touch again and keep having these conversations.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Bye-bye, Maggie. See ya.
All right, everyone. Have a